This is Grier, and you're listening to the Black Studies Podcast, a Mellon Grant-sponsored series of conversations examining the history of the field. Our conversations engage with a wide range of activists and scholars, senior figures in the field, graduate students, and everyone in between, culture workers and political organizers, in order to explore the cultural and political meaning of Black studies as an area of inquiry and its critical methods. Today's conversation is with Yasmine Grier, who is a writer and researcher from Baltimore, Maryland. She is a PhD student in the Department of Black Studies at Northwestern University, with research interests including the intellectual histories of the Black radical tradition and Black feminist theory, Black girlhood, 20th century social movements, and Black critical and political theory. At Northwestern, she is a Mellon Interdisciplinary Cluster Fellow in Critical Theory. Yasmine is an alumna of Howard University and has worked in socio-political research capacities as well as in the educational nonprofit space. She envisions her work as a love letter to Black girls and women and is forever in service to them. In today's conversation, we discuss the classroom as a key component in the projects of Black study and Black studies, the importance of imagination in Black liberatory struggles, and the role and politics of academic disciplinarity in relation to Black studies. Hi, Yasmine. It's so great to have you on the pod today. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm really excited to have you on today. Really excited to hear about your work and just your journey in Black studies and learn a little bit about you. So let's just start with kind of the first question. I'm curious to know what questions in the study of Black life intrigue you and kind of guide your thinking and writing at this moment. We'll discuss how this relates to the field of Black studies a little bit later on. But for now, I just want to hear about the trajectory of your thinking from undergrad to the present moment and any key points in this journey that have really led you to Black studies. I'd say consider this an invitation to narrate your intellectual journey.
Yeah, thank you for asking me that. It's really important, the piece of the question in which you asked about just at this current moment in time, because with me going into my second year, I really am still trying to figure things out. And I can easily narrate like how I got to where I am, but where I'm going is very much up in the air right now as I just navigate the questions that I'm into. But my introduction to Black studies was kind of like happenstance, honestly. It happened naturally. I studied political science and sociology at Howard and ended up getting into Black studies because I took one class with an Afghan professor at Howard, Dr. Joshua Myers, just because I wanted to, really. I was pre-law when I first came to Howard on the very basic, everybody wants to be an attorney or the president or a senator type situation, or a diplomat, like work for an embassy somewhere. So at Howard, everybody who's in political science wants to do one of those things. You either want to be the president or VP or, like at the time, we had not yet had a Black woman on the Supreme Court. So it was like, that's what we all want to do. So I wanted to be an attorney, and I had an interest in legal jurisprudence and just like the law itself more than anything. On the mock trial team, I was a really good attorney, won a lot of awards, but I was always the person on the team who was like, case law, this is the objection that we use in this instance, what is the legal theory? When it came to the actual practice of the law, it just did not interest me, which is really uncommon. Like most people want to be, right, like most people want to be attorneys because they want to do the whole objection thing. I was like, I hate this. I hate the performing. I don't like the going back and forth. And granted, like mock trial is not a good introduction to what it's actually like being an attorney, because I know it's way less interesting and it's so much more dramatized. But I just got to a point where I was like, I'm not enjoying this. And pre-law students at Howard are kind of insufferable, I'm not going to lie. So I kind of looked around me at a point and I was like, I don't think this is what I want to do. But it also happened kind of naturally because I started at Howard in fall of 2019, which meant that the pandemic ended my freshman year, essentially. So I was part of that freshman college class that got sent home off campus for the first time. And we did not come back to school in person until fall 2021. So because we were in DC, Howard has like just a really unique relationship to the decisions that it gets to make about its instruction. So all my my friends who went to state schools were back in school in fall 2020. We were at home for an entire year. And even when we came back in fall 2021, we were mostly virtual with maybe like one class per student in person or whatever. And so I say all that because I'm 18. I get sent home after spending maybe like 8 months in DC, and the quote unquote like racial reckoning 2020 moment is what I'm going to call it happens. And for my age group, that looked so different for each student when it came to like their relationship with their home life, the classes that they were taking. I was not somebody who took to the streets to organize that summer just because I didn't feel called to do it. I'm not an organizer, like in any sense of the word. And I'm also not somebody who feels particularly compelled to protest in that physical, like visceral format. I leaned into my studies is actually what felt the most natural to me. So I'm stuck at home with my immediate family, which is my 2 parents and my 3 younger siblings in Gwinnett County, Georgia, where there wasn't much going on at the time. It was super slow. I didn't have quick access to Atlanta. So I just leaned into school and the readings that I was assigned and the actual assignments that I had to do. So at the time, entering my sophomore year, I was taking Intro to Political Theory at Howard. I got to take an Intro to Black Politics class in poli-sci. So I started to take the more like actual interesting classes. And I realized that I actually really enjoyed the reading and writing thing. I've always been a student my entire life, like the straight A student, honor roll all the time, like teacher's pet or whatever. But I realized in that moment, really in the pandemic when I didn't have anything else to do, I had internships that I worked and stuff like that virtually, but I really was leaning into just study. And so what happened around like March-ish 2021, I had some friends who applied to be Mellon Fellows at Howard. I was like, I don't want to do that, but it did make me start to consider whether I wanted to be a professor. So I started talking to different faculty members at Howard who were like, yeah, we could definitely see you doing this. We love your writing. You're a wonderful student in class. They really like hyped the whole thing up when it came to like, I get to go to Trader Joe's on a Tuesday at 12 and then teach a class at 2 or whatever. Like my schedule is my own to make. They romanticized the life out of it for me. So at that point, I kind of decided I want to get a PhD. I'm going to pivot and I'm going to, instead of doing another 3 years of school and go to law school, I'm going to do at least another 5 and get a doctorate. So at that point, I was really, really, really heavy in the social sciences, and Black studies, at least institutionally, did not come to me until I took the first class I took with Dr. Josh Myers at Howard was Black Thought in the Diaspora. This was the fall of my junior year, and it was just a totally different space than anything else I had felt at Howard for a number of reasons. One of the first ones being we're listening to music to open up the class, and he's giving us a few seconds to like meditate and to ruminate on some Nina Simone or some Miles Davis or like Bernice Johnson Reagan, like just all the stuff. I was like, I've never seen this before. This is totally new to me. But he was also the first professor I had who actually cared about the study that we were doing as students and the scholarship that we were producing. Like he actually wanted us to get it. And that's not to say that that wasn't happening in other spaces. It's to say that with the pandemic hitting, I think a lot of professors, because people just had stuff going on, like it was easy to not care as much about whether your students were actually learning and just to make sure they were getting the grades they wanted to get and I'm doing what I need to do to hit my requirements. But he was like, no, y'all are going to read these books and you're going to get on Zoom and we're going to use this space to actually help you learn some things. And so at the time when I was considering what I wanted to get my degree in, political science was top for me because I bought into the hegemonic disciplines. I was like, this is where you have to go. This is what you have to do. I actually had a professor tell me, she was like, don't get your degree in Black studies because if you do poli-sci or history or sociology, you'll be able to teach in a Black studies department. But if you do a degree in Black studies, you won't be able to go in reverse and teach in those other departments, which is so far from the truth, right? But that's the kind of like rhetoric I was given or or whatever. But the more I got into it and the more classes I took, I was like, I actually hate it over there. And this is where I want to be. Like, this is where the real work is happening. These people are actually doing like interesting stuff that matters in the world. And that's not to say that that's not happening elsewhere. Other spaces at school just had like a really unserious vibe to them that I just was not rocking with. And so ultimately, I chose Black Studies because as I started to further develop my research interests, Black Studies seemed like the place that would be the most accepting of me, number one. And number two, it mattered a lot to me what my degree said, just to be frank. I am first gen, so me going as far as like to get the bachelor's and then to get the doctorate degree, it mattered to me what it was in. And it just felt, even at a young age, like way more powerful to be able to say I'm doing Black studies instead of political science, sociology, or whatever. And there were very, finite reasons I chose Black studies as well when it came to the kind of research that I want to do and who is available in certain departments, which leads me into talking about my research interests, I guess, in a very long-winded manner. Black studies PhD programs gave me the highest number of people who could actually help me do the kind of work that I wanted to do, compared to if I got a PhD in something else, it would literally be like, I'm friends with the one Black professor in this department who actually understands the kind of work that I want to do. And that's about it. Like, I would have really been pulling people together from a whole bunch of places. And so when I was applying to grad school, what I was interested in stemmed from that like 2020 moment in which my personal story was all of my friends are going out, they're picking up posters, they're angry, they're organizing. I'm channeling my energy in a different way. And at the time, I was really interested in, one, what activism is conceptually, but also the different kinds of things that people buy into and what their radical organizing looks like. And it was personal for me because I wasn't somebody who was like going out yelling at cops. And in school, those are the people that you learn about. So you learn about the MLKs, the Ella Bakers, the John Lewises, and not so much about people doing other kinds of work that matter in different ways, because everybody has a different, role that they play in getting us to liberation. And so the research question that I wanted to ask was rooted in looking around me and wanting to feel empowered and know that what I was doing mattered, even if it wasn't that. And it really came down to, at the time, what I was kind of looking at is just like everyday activism. I am a Black feminist. If I had to put a time period, bookend on what I'm interested in, it is really 20th century, just because everybody who's important to me was born after 1960. So with that in mind, my mom is a hairstylist. Her mom used to be a dental hygienist. My great-grandfather drove buses in Baltimore City. My other grandmother was a social worker. And so I'm looking around me and I'm wondering, like, my grandma was not Diane Nash, but what was important about the work that she did and how she contributed to making material conditions better for Black people around us. So I saw it as kind of wanting to ask questions about, like, what makes something radical? What defines activism? More like conceptual, broad questions in terms of like, what is a social movement even? But also at the time, I was really I've always been into the arts, but I was able to really lean into like art history. I have passions for literary studies and just like performance as well. And so I found myself recognizing how art could be activism too. So I wanted to write about that kind of stuff, like what kind of questions are people asking and answering in their sculptures, in their, street performances and stuff like that. So it was broad at the time, but the through line was organizing, activism, the Black woman in everyday work. And where I am with it now, I guess, after finishing my first year, is I'm still kind of in that vein a little bit, but I'm more specific to Black girlhood and young Black girls. I am more conceptual with the questions I'm asking and more bird's eye view, thinking about actual like definitions. And I think also just because a lot of the people around me are Black critical theorists, I am more into theory than I was before. I am a critical theory fellow at Northwestern, and I came in saying I wanted to do political theory, but now it really is like, okay, knee deep in Hartman, Moten, Mbembe, Sharp, like in the weeds for real. What is ontology? What, like, just the big what questions. So at this current moment, I don't know what my dissertation is going to be on, but I'm asking more like broad questions right now than anything. And I think over time, they'll lead me to what I actually want to do. But for now, it's more so just like, what even are the things is what's on my mind. And a very long-winded answer to that question.
I appreciate you being so detailed and really illustrating for us your journey. It's so interesting how when you talk about just the interest in kind of pre-law, but then that pivot to Black studies and how just the classroom itself, like that class that you were on with Dr. Myers, it seems like, you know, that Black studies classroom also just opened the way in which you were even able to engage in learning and understanding in these really these intimate processes along the way of just coming into knowledge. So
yes,
I appreciated you sharing that, and it was really beautifully said, especially like the like that multi-sensory engagement is just like that real embodied kind of knowing was really
it was just a totally different thing, like a completely different vibe. He had whole books on the syllabus, and that's not to say that other professors at Howard didn't, right? Because I had to read whole books in my classes before, but he was like, no, we're breaking this thing down by chapter. I don't care if you're a sophomore, a junior, or a senior, we're reading Black Marxism and you're going to get it. And we're going to work through, you know, these definitions and these terms and these time periods that he's giving us. What really opened it up for me in his class, we read Black Internationalist Feminism by Cheryl Higashida, and the engagement with artistic practitioners in that book and the way that she wrote about them. I was like, I'm not seeing this in the other classes that I'm taking at Howard. And like I said, that wasn't to say that it wasn't happening. It was more so just, it felt more like a one-off in the departments that I engaged in. Like I could point at maybe one or two professors and say, this person is doing real serious Black studies work. Whereas once I kind of transitioned into taking the FM classes, it was like, no, everybody here has an intellectual commitment to something bigger than this. And you could feel it in the classroom, even on Zoom. So that was really important to me. And you'll hear his name a lot throughout the course of this podcast episode, because Dr. Myers is really like the person who got me into it. He's actually the only person at Howard that I even took IFAM classes with, because Dr. Carr is one of like the big people at Howard that everybody's like, yeah, take class with Dr. Carr. I'm like, that's cute. He's a wonderful, respected intellectual, but his classes were always at 8 a.m. and I wasn't doing that. I was not doing that. I was like, who's this guy over here, you know, teaching these classes? So yes, to everything that you just said. It was a whole experience.
It's amazing listening to you just talk about the experience and how transformative it was, especially as you were talking about that moment in 2020, like COVID, and just being pushed into study in such an intentional way, even guided, let me say that better, guided into like study in these different practices that ultimately, from what you're saying, like really led you to Black studies, like to pursue that PhD, the doctorate in Black studies, which is it's so precious to me, because as you were saying, like that commitment to something larger than self, but doing like there's so much labor that goes into study, like being like the close reading, being just being so meticulous and intentional with it is no small act. It's so I guess I'm saying all this to say it's exciting to hear how you've been pushed into this space to do the work that you're doing now and to sit with these broader questions that are guiding you to more of your interests, like in a more specific way. So thank you so much again. I guess my next question for you then would be, especially being that you were in a Black Studies department, how do you imagine the field of Black Studies, its origins, inside and outside of the academy, considering activism as a huge component of it, as well as the exploration of the idea of a Black intellectual tradition, as we were just speaking about? How do you understand the meaning and purpose of the field and how it should negotiate its relationship between, its political impact as well as the simultaneous development of an intellectual expressive tradition?
Yeah, the reason this is such a beautiful question is because it reminded me of another aspect of my research interest that I so conveniently forgot to mention to you, but it actually answers the question in terms of how I imagine Black studies. The keyword in that question is the imagine piece for me. And I actually think that that's what the whole thing is about. In everything that I do when it comes to my writing for my seminars and the books that I'm reading, the main through line that I have seen in Black studies as a discipline or undisciplined, depending on how you conceptualize it, and that's a whole other thing that I'm gonna, put over. I'm gonna put that over there. We'll probably talk about it when we get to another question. Is Black studies does both the work of tearing down and building something else, and it was always about what comes after this. And I think what makes it so empowering for me is it was never, ever, 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 ever meant to just be merely corrective. And I think that that's a really mischaracterization of the field that people who haven't had the privilege of really getting knee deep in the foundational literature can easily fall victim to that mistake of thinking that Black studies has just always been about correcting what they get wrong everywhere else, when it actually really isn't about that at all. It's actually, we're doing a totally different thing. We're asking and answering questions about Black life that have a little bit to do with what y'all have, what y'all have going on over there, but not really. We're doing what we want to do regardless. And we're forward thinking without romanticizing the after. We're asking questions about what's going to come next and what kind of lives do we want to live without forgetting where we came from either. The very simple, literal idea of Sankofa, the Sankofa practice, actually. Black studies is doing that. It's where do we come from? Where are we right now? Where are we going? And so I focus in on that imagination piece because, like I said, I forgot to mention this, but again, in another class I took with Dr. Myers at Howard, which was 20th century Black socio-political thought, we read Freedom Dreams by Robin D.G. Kelley. And that book for me literally opened a world wide open, to possibilities that I didn't even know existed when it came to how we could conceptualize things. Literally just in terms of imagining as something radical and having the will to dream and to want something better than what we have right now. And so I imagine Black studies as a collaborative space. It was always meant to be an intellectual, political, communal project in which people from all avenues are coming together and they're putting what they have to bring in the pot. And it's okay, what are we doing with this? Where is it going? Who's it benefiting? Who's it serving? From its birth institutionally is the keyword there. When Black studies departments were forming in academia, it was always about serving the community first and foremost. It was never a careerist project. It was very much, this is what we need to do, and these are the people who we're going to help. These other departments aren't giving us the soul food that we need intellectually, so we're going to do our own thing. And we're going to organize and we're going to make them give us the tools that we need to do it because we already have our own tools anyway. And we've been doing this, but there were very specific systemic things that needed to happen. So more than anything, I imagine it as collaborative and communal to the extent that it was always about I don't even want to say giving back, because giving back implies that like you left, you know? It was always supposed to be, we're still in the community, talking to people every day, doing that work on the ground. And they're telling us, look, this is what's going on. These are our problems. You have the privilege of sitting in an office and reading books, reading the statistics, reading the theory for hours and days on end. Work with us to figure out how we're going to fix this and where we're going to go. That is what's most important to me. It was always supposed to be about coming together, and I don't think that's been lost. I think it's just easy to forget in the moment that we're in that it was always supposed to be about bringing people together, more community oriented than individual, which is bare minimum, like basic to the tenets of Black Studies as an intellectual project. But like I said, it's really easy to get lost in the sauce and forget that that's what we're supposed to be doing this whole time. Like, that's what it's all about.
Thank you so much for what you just said. I agree with you, and the words that you said that really sat with me. Like, as a collaborative, communal, like, project, like, there is no, like, kind of dissolving this facade of separation amongst folks and the people working towards our shared goal and the project of liberation. Like, there is no in separate boxes we are getting to this, but rather we are coming together with what can I add to the pot. I love what you said, where you were like, what can I bring? What can I all right, now this is what we got. How do we work with what we have? And the sole emphasis on the we. And like you're saying, I 110% agree. I think that being in spaces as so can sometimes could create I don't even want to, like, a mental barrier, almost like create this idea that there is some separation. In reality, there isn't. The emphasis on imagination too is something that I really appreciated you bringing up, especially when you said, forward thinking without romanticizing the after. Yeah. And then like just that will to dream, and like even in those dreams, like being honest and open with the possibilities of what may arise, not just, idealizing what we would desire to have, but being open and generous with the possibilities of what may come and how we can be in those future moments. I think that that's so, I don't know, I really enjoyed what you just said. I really did. It's making me...
Yeah, thank you for that. I was just going to say, because like the romanticization piece, the lack thereof, is so important, because I'm not going to say it's easy work. Those aren't the right words to say. What I'm going to say is it's trendy right now for people to lean into world building, is what I've noticed, like in the academy. Everybody's asking the world building question, right? And that's important and that's cute. And it's like, if we're doing away with the world that we have now, because it's not working, it hasn't been working, or at least to put it the way that everybody puts it, like it's working in the way that it's been functioned to work, which is to annihilate Black life, right? It's not working for us. We have to be key on thinking about what we want to come out of it without killing the Black life that like we already have here. And I think when we lean into the world building question in terms of imagining the after, you cannot do that without thinking about what you already have and how you're going to use it to get to the after. Because I do think it is easy, maybe is the word I want to say, to just be like, we're doing away with all this, to hell with who doesn't want to join us. And it's like, wait a minute, these are Black people, like they live here. They're real. This isn't just like a cute little thing in which it's like, Viva la Revolution. It's like, no. Well, it's like, yes, and who we're bringing with us matters, that they actually make it to the finish line, and that we like what it is that we're building, and that if we don't like what it is that we're building on the other side, that we have the tools to try again and the bravery to try again. So the unwillingness to romanticize it piece is really important to me, because it is messy. The literature has proven that time and time again, and history has proven that. And I find solace, if you will, in knowing that people have tried this before me. They've gotten it wrong, they've gotten it right, and they've told us what to do. Like, I'm not in this by myself, I guess is the whole point.
No, everything you're saying, literally, because I'm thinking about, just as you're speaking, going back to your earlier sentiments, just about study. You know what I mean? Like that, it being so integral to how we can even fathom or imagine the field of Black studies.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Which brings me to the next question. I want to talk a little bit about, I guess, your work in relation to the field of Black studies. So I know that your work and interests are situated in questions around politics of Black life and sociology, but more importantly, or more specifically, might I say, pardon me, Black radical thought and Black feminist theories, both of which encompass so much insight about the study of Black life. So again, I want to ask, how do you see your work situated in relation to the past of Black studies? How does it open up new horizons within the field? Or even how does it expand key elements in the field in this current moment of how you're considering your research and your interests?
Yeah, it's so funny to me because I'm going into my second year, I really am like a baby when it comes to all of this. And so I haven't even learned like how to crawl yet. I think I just started doing I just learned how to sit up maybe 2 months ago, but I'm learning to give myself more credit when it comes to how much I do already know, which can be hard. As a grad student, what they teach us to do is to make an intervention. That's always the word. It's you're coming into a field of study in which so much has been written already, but what are you going to do differently? Which can feel sometimes very daunting because throughout the course of my study, even just here at Northwestern, just within the few months that I've been a grad student, I'll have a question and I'll think a thing and it's oh, somebody wrote about that already. It takes me a second to get to the place where it's I'm grateful that somebody is already doing this work because it means that we've come a really long way, right? And at the same time, I have people in the back of my head saying well, what are you going to do? What are you going to bring to the table? It's girl, I don't know. I'm just trying to pass these classes. I'm just trying to pass these classes. But right now, I can say I see myself doing a lot of, I don't want to call it retroactive work, but like I said earlier, I'm a very conceptual thinker. And so I think I've been pushed to ask more tangible, tactile questions that have not quite benefited me because I don't even have answers to the bigger, more bird's eye view things yet. And so by that, I mean, in order for me to have a good understanding of what I want to bring to Black studies and how my intellectual history fits in with Black studies, I first have to even know what Black studies is. And what I've been doing as of late is really leaning into the foundational literature. And that feels like home to me. It's exciting to, like I said, have a question. Because again, and you know this because you're a grad student, when we don't understand something or we want to understand something, it feels like the world is going to end because it's oh my goodness, what is this This is the most important thing going on right now. People are dying and I'm stressed out about this one chapter in this book, right? But I'm at a place now, I'm being so serious. It can feel that way because the academy pushes it to, it encourages those emotions. And so I'm leaning into my not knowing while recognizing, no, you do know what Black studies is. You do know what this work requires of you. Just find where it is that you fit into it. So, like I said, it's still developing, but I am more of a theorist at heart, and I am just asking more conceptual questions, and I'm leaning into the discomfort and knowing that I'm going to get those answers because a lot of them are already out there. People have done a lot of the important work already, and being a grad student will force you to feel what's my big contribution going to be? When first of all, it's just girl, it's a dissertation. Calm down. Yeah. You're going to write so many more books after this. This is just the thing that you're doing to, get out of the program. But part of what makes it so hard is because because I'm so committed to Black studies, I want what I'm writing to be good, and I want it to matter to people. I want to honor the traditions that have come before me and those intellectual genealogies that have already existed so that I can find my place. And actually, that's where the research interests come in. Because that's what I'm interested in. Like, that's what I want to do. I'm trying to, just for my own sake, know more about the intellectual history of the ideas that I've been taught and encouraged to read so that I can figure out where I fit in. But the knowing it on its own is like powerful within itself. It's really truly a reflection of just questions that I don't have answers to, that I'm not going to say are easy to come by, but very simply like, how did we get here? What kind of work are people doing? What inspired them to ask the questions that they're asking? And I do know about myself that I'm a product of my environment. So I mentioned, Dr. Myers already. It's very, very clear that my research interests were born in the classes that I took with him and the kinds of questions that he was asking. And I actually love that. I'm not like ashamed to admit that, because I'm a product of everything that came before me and the kind of work that people have been doing for an extremely long time. Because I'm so young, it can feel like there's just so much out there, because there is so much out there. But I find peace in knowing that people have been doing this way before I was even a thought. In 2001 is when I was born. So to me, the world is just so like, oh my goodness. And it's like, calm down. Somebody answered this question in an essay in 1970. Go read it. Like, she did it already. Yeah.
Yes. No.
So I don't know if that was an answer to your question, but
No. It's a perfect response, because especially given, because I share a lot of the same sentiments you were just sharing. Like, we are babies in this. And a lot of and that's not to say baby as if we don't know, but like, we are very new and open, you know what I mean, to what is out there. And part of what you were getting at too is with that openness, with that space, although it could feel unsettling, it gives us that opportunity to really tend to like the lineages that we are a part of, or even like just it gives us the space to be curious enough to find them, fall into them, and then allow that dance to happen between what we know, what we don't know, what we think we know, like, oh my gosh, I felt you so much when what you last shared. It made me think about when I had read, what was it, Barbara Christian's A Race for Theory, and I was just like, oh my gosh, what the heck? I've been needing this since forever, and it's like, it
was right there. Like, she did it already.
It's so perfectly. It's just right there, and but that feeling too of just like coming into knowledge that you feel a part of, that you feel like you are in the tradition of doing that work and honoring it. That's valuable. So you definitely answered the question 110%. And I really
While still even,
and I'm going to take the...
if I can just add, because the whole thing is like, yes, I'm a baby. I'm only 24. It's only my third day out here, quite literally. But also like knowing and trusting that I do have something to add and contribute, I think is part of the game as well, because I'm sitting in these classes, reading what everybody else has to say. And in doing that, it's helping me figure out what I have to say. Like I said earlier, I'm learning how to trust that I am smart, number one. And then number two, like, I can do this thing and I have something important to say. And I'm not just, because I know you can relate. Like, that's how it can feel sometimes. It can feel like, oh, she did it already. What is there for me to do? But the whole thing is when you start to, follow the bibliography and you read that thing and you talk to this person, it's like, well, actually, they haven't done this yet. And I think so, like, to tie it all together, it's 2025. Clearly, the world has revealed to us that there's still so much work to be done. Like, so much left
to say the least.
To do. Yes, like so much left to do. And so it's a delicate balancing act, honoring what came before you while still figuring out your place in it. It's not a selfish project. most days. And then other days it is like, I want what I'm doing to be good. So what is it? Like, what am I going to write? What do I have to say? But I'm trusting the process, at least is what people tell me to do. They tell me that by years 4 and 5, I'll have a little bit better of a grasp on this thing. So I'm deciding to trust them in that. But for now, I really am just taking these classes and, in a very literal sense, trying to understand scenes of subjection. It's like, what are we doing? What are we talking about? I'm in this chapter again. Somebody break it down to me. Like, it is taking advantage of having the time to do that so that I can figure out what I'm going to do with it.
Very much.
Yeah.
I think also getting back to that point of like balancing the pursuit and doing the work that at times could be, you know, because we want the work to be good, but also recognizing that you want it to be great because it's in service of something greater than ourselves, you know?
Yes.
And I think that speaks back to you're very, as you're speaking, so purposeful and intentional in the work that I feel like the study, the energy that you put into it, what it gives you back is that really like the beautiful projects, the insights, because you dedicated the time, the energy, so you'll be great. I know we'll both be great. But I also understand too, being in like the second year of my program, just like, oof, okay, what's going? I think I'm all right. It's just all over the place. But I think what grounds me, and as you're talking, I feel like what grounds you, and you correct me if I'm wrong, is just that commitment to Black studies, commitment to Black life, and commitment to the liberation of Black life from within the conditions that it is within at the moment and of the past, and who knows, in our immediate future, you know?
Yes, that was an accurate representation of what I've been trying to say. So thank you.
No, you said it, but I'm giving back what you're saying. I'm literally just reflecting what you're giving me, and I appreciate it a lot. So I do have a question now, being on the topic of like, you know, your interest, but also your graduate work is being done in a Black Studies department. And I know prior to you were working within political science, and from our conversation, you have taken classes in AFAM at Howard and stuff, but I'm curious to see how you understand the relationship between the different disciplines that you have studied within. I guess Black Studies now, political science, undergrad, but even if you want to talk to some of the other classes that you've taken or departments that you've taken classes within, I'd say. So let me just say it again. How do you see these disciplines in relation to each other? How do you think working within these different disciplinary spaces of Black studies and beyond have impacted your approach to writing, thinking, and possibly even teaching? And I guess, what impact did it have, or does it continue to have on you as a student?
Yeah. So the amazing thing about you asking me this question is this is a question I ask myself every day when I sit down to do work and I go into my seminars. No, it's so serious. Like so to answer the question, right? I am being called to ask this question myself because of the nature of the field, the world at large, and the discipline / undisciplined / interdisciplinarity question, right? And so here's what I mean by that. In undergrad, clearly I was taking classes wherever it made sense to me to do so based on my interests. Quite literally, at Howard, I was one of the first students to finish the social justice certificate, which was offered through the Social Justice Consortium that is new. It's only developed within the past few years. At the time, it was spearheaded by Drs. Bahia Muhammad and Nikki Taylor at Howard, and that was a project in which students could take classes across subjects that related to social justice topics and get a certificate. But it was also very community oriented. So we were taking classes with people who like literally were in DC as well. So doing that, I was taking classes in art history, literally on art as activism, reading articles on the impact and the power of the Emmett Till cover of the magazine, while also taking a class on hip hop studies in English and doing lyrical analysis while also taking a class in philosophy, reading about critical race theory. And so, one, I've literally been trained to use a whole bunch of methods and think in community with people from a whole bunch of disciplines. I've been trained to do so, but also naturally, I required that of myself because I wasn't satisfied in one subject until I got to Black Studies. And it's actually low-key kind of like the whole point. That's how I got here. So in doing political science, one of the main reasons that I did not choose the poli-sci degree was because these days, you can't get a PhD in political science without learning how to code. I know how to do that. I know how to do it. I'm good at quantitative analysis. I actually have a very mathematical and statistical brain, so I can do it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's finicky, but I can do it. The problem came into play is I'm just always somebody who doesn't like being boxed in. I'm actually really like hard-headed and stubborn. I don't like being told what to do.
Okay.
And so when I'm being told, when I'm being told you have to answer this question this way, I'm but why? But why do I have to answer this question this way? Can you give me a valid justification as to why I have to learn these skills? I think now I can look back and I'm grateful to be able to say that I have at least elementary training in so many disciplines. But what it's done for me now is I've recognized that like Black Studies really is the place where you can do them all. And so I bring up the interdisciplinarity question because since coming to grad school, I've really been like uncomfortably forced to wonder how much that label benefits us, how much it benefits us to even like position Black Studies in relation to those other disciplines. It never really was supposed to be like, what am I trying to say? It was always its own thing. It became institutionalized formally in the 1960s, but we know that scholars and community practitioners were doing Black Studies work way before that, right? And so that's kind of how I came into the intellectual histories research question because I'm so fascinated in the before that got us to right here. But I think with us being in 2025 now and kind of like looking around and taking inventory as a grad student who has to, for my program, take classes in other departments, who has been doing like foundational reading on Black Studies and its tenets and what our aims are, what it is that we're setting out to do. I am constantly every day asking the question, like, what is our relation to each other? What I know is that they don't like us over there. Like in those other disciplines, they don't like my presence in the classroom. They're extremely violent. It's uncomfortable. I don't like being over there either. Like I don't like having to do it, but they do have valuable things to give me. I also think and know, in my experience at least, the way that I'll put it is because Black Studies, we got our first actual department in the 1960s. People were doing Black Studies work before then. So we know like Du Bois was doing Black Studies before anybody could get a degree in it. We know Anna Julia Cooper was doing Black Studies before anybody could get a degree in it, right? I am asking questions about to what extent it benefits us to try to stay in relation with those other disciplines and whether we are, I don't want to use these words, but nothing else is coming to mind, whether we're shooting ourselves in the foot, fighting so hard to make them see us as legitimate. My answer is yes, right now at least. But again, what do I know? I just got here. What I can say, at least for how I view the world in my classes and the papers that I'm writing, it's very clear that I have a political science and sociology background because I am the questions that I ask when I try to understand things are very institutional, conceptual, and they represent like a conglomerate of things. I do think it's a reflection of kind of how I've been trained, what I'm going to do with it. I'm still trying to figure that out. But I, at my core, definitely in undergrad saw the relationship between political science and sociology as being very clear. And I will say that I hate that the university forces us to break out in the ways that it does, to the extent that one thing I do want to do, I want to familiarize myself with just the history of the university period and like academia, like how people even, because I know it's out there, I know there are books on it. Like, how did we even come to saying this is going to be political science, this is history, this is econ? I have been thinking a lot about that lately because it is so, for lack of a better word, segregated. And sometimes that benefits us, just to say it out loud. Like, sometimes it is useful to be able to say, the people in this group know how to do this thing, the people in this group know how to do this thing, consult with these scholars for these kinds of questions. And other times it's not so useful. So this is kind of a cop-out, but my answer to your question is it's a question mark myself. And I'm still figuring it out. But largely at this stage, I myself am trying to figure out like what my relationship to those other disciplines is. Is Black Studies a discipline itself? Do we benefit from calling it a discipline? What do we gain and what do we lose when trying to wed all these things together? So that's very like meta, but I know that people are already asking these questions and writing about it. I just have to
and that's the thing. These are brilliant questions to sit with and like just explore. So as you were talking, I'm just like, yes. Even when you pose the question, to what extent does it benefit Black Studies to want to be in relation or to define itself in relation to these other like traditional disciplines? I thought that was really brilliant to bring up. It was interesting listening to how you talked about poli-sci and sociology, or just like how it kind of offered you some tools in how you think, especially like institutionally, and how you're considering the disciplines and disciplinary formations and stuff. And I feel like that it lends itself so much to you being in a Black Studies department, being a graduate student operating across these different, spaces on campus, and really negotiating like the space itself and what you're doing. And I feel like that offers you a kind of fertile space to even just continuously sit with that alongside your work. You know what I mean? I feel like they inform one another so generously.
Yeah, because I do want to clarify, like, I'm not, again, for lack of a better word, I'm not shitting on them. Like, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. I will be at the National Conference of Black Political Scientists next year. We read literature across the disciplines for a reason because we have to, right?
Yes.
Really, the whole point that I'm making is like Black Studies was born out of people not being able to do the kind of work that they wanted to do in those other spaces. When we consider how fresh the first Black Studies degree even is. So it's more so that, like, it's more so, I don't love political science. I love Black political scientists who are asking important questions. I don't love sociology. I love Black sociologists who are doing important work. And those distinctions are really important. So, like I said, I'm not just like completely, I don't know to what extent we should do away with them or whatever, but it's a communal project is my whole point, I guess.
Yeah. No, and I appreciate that because I think and I think this goes back to how we were talking earlier about just imagining Black Studies and thinking about disciplinary and things like that, and just what aspects of these tools, like the tools that we're getting from these different spaces, you know what I mean? Whether it's political science, other disciplines, sociology, for like as we're talking, like what are these tools? What are the terms and conditions of these like thinking spaces being in relation to each other? Like how can we expand? How can we dissolve? How can we reform it? Like I feel like essentially what you're getting at is the open-endedness of it all. And that's part of the reason too why I feel like it's actually really great that in talking with you, like, and I feel similarly, it's just kind of like it is so that it's really open. It requires so much like, study. We keep coming back to this word, but
Well,
it
yes.
requires so much of that. Yes.
Yeah.
To even sit with these questions and consider, and collective study out. Like, that real, we're talking across space, across ages, across time. Like, we're that dialogue just being so fluid, but so necessary for us to even grapple with these questions. So I think the answers that you're giving are like, this is necessary. What you're saying is true. And I appreciate your responses a lot. So I guess if this is a big speculative question, so to say. And again, answer it in whatever way feels best to you. But over the past 5+ decades, way before we were born, what do you think Black Studies has done particularly well? And what are some things that you think it has not done particularly well? Those are my 2 questions at the moment.
Yes. So thankfully, I actually do have definitive answers to this one. It's not going to be so open-ended. So I think because we are so young, we have the privilege of reaping the benefits of things that people did before us. And I think it's really easy to criticize what you have right in front of you because you're thinking you're thinking about the future, you're thinking about how you want things to be better without taking the time to literally acknowledge, I'm here and I'm able to do this because of people who took certain risks before me. So when you brought the question up, the first thing that came to mind in terms of what Black Studies has done well, first of all, it exists. And I think that's important to say. That's very important to say in this moment. Yes. And I feel like we can really, really easily, because we're critical people, because we're rigorous, because we care about the work and we're committed to it. It's what are we going to do better? How are we improving? What has to change? And it's wait a minute, I am 24 in a Black Studies department at a PWI, and in a few years, I'll be able to get a doctorate degree in Black Studies. It's important to say that we've been able to sustain that over the years and over these decades. And the reason I say that is because it's so young and so fresh. Institutionally is the key word there. Institutionally. Queen Annie and them were doing Black Studies. So this is a thing that's been centuries in the making. But the point that I'm making is, and I was actually thinking about this earlier this morning, last year, Nathan Hare passed away, who was the chair of the first Black Studies department at San Francisco State. Yes. So it's we only just lost him last year in 2024. So we're very much still in the early stages of this thing institutionally. And it's important because I am so young and so new to it that I recognize verbally the work that has been done before me so that I can even do a thing like this. So what has Black Studies done well? People are graduating and they're getting degrees still in 2025. Let's, in this moment, people are still at increasing rates coming to Black Studies institutionally and wanting to do this work. It's been sustained, which is important to say. Which leads me to what I think Black Studies can do better. This is potentially maybe a hot take. If it is, I don't care. I don't know. The point is I'm supposed to make mistakes and mess up or whatever. I think at the same time, we can do better at vetting the people that we let in. And what I mean by that is, earlier when you asked me about my relationship to Black Studies, one of the questions or whatever, I said something along the lines of a big mistake is that we've allowed people to mischaracterize the discipline as being merely corrective. There are a lot of people who see Black Studies as that, as just, the history department won't let me do work on 19th century young Black girls in Mississippi, so I'm going to come do it here in Black Studies because they'll let me. It's hold on, Tiger. It's actually way more than that. It's more than just in your department, they're forcing you to cite Foucault, and we're not going to force you to do that here. It's way more than that. It's way bigger than that. And so I think what has happened is, over the course of the years, in trying to institutionalize the thing and in attempts to legitimize it because they were forced to do so in order for the departments to actually stay alive, almost any and everybody has been able to like take a piece of the pie. And I think that can dilute what's actually supposed to be happening here. So this isn't me saying the doors need to be closed because I was let in, right? So that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is across the board, I think now is a good time to reevaluate and to get back to those terms of order, the definitions, the what are we here for, the who is the we, period. Because if any and everybody gets to say that they do Black studies, what are the negative impacts of that?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm going to say. And I think it's especially important right now because Black studies is under attack and has always been under attack, but the world is just now realizing that Black studies is under attack. It's like, we've been fighting this fight for decades. Don't know where y'all have been, but because the attention is on it now, and it's like, okay, in Florida, they don't want us to do this work legally. They're getting rid of the AP/FM classes. It's like, it's the kind of thing where it's like, you kind of have to pull your people together, and it's like, okay, what are we doing? What are we saying to them when they give us this mic? What are we offering them when they ask us these questions? Because we've been doing the work. It's been happening, but we have a bigger audience now. So how are we going to present it and who's included when we do it? So those are my answers to that.
Thank you so much. As you were just as you were finishing what you were just saying, the emphasis on we was so important. And like you were saying, like the terms of order. And I think that speaks back to our earlier bit of the conversation where we were just talking about like the politics, like the political imperative of the work, it being something beyond ourselves and towards what, and those who are working to it, sharing that commitment, sharing the brunt, like the labor of that. I think that really gets to the second question where you were like how it can improve. And I think that's extremely necessary, especially given the context of the world and
yes.
just the overt fascism that we are now having to operate within. I appreciate that a lot.
All that.
So this is my last question, and I think it might be my favorite question, and I'm excited to hear what you have to say. Whatever the future of the field may look like, right, in this institutional context, we don't know. But what questions do you think are most urgent for us to be sitting with right now? Like, what are the questions, or even if it's just one question, that you want us all to be asking in this moment?
Yeah. So I can tell you what I am thinking about right now in terms of urgency. The first thing being just how we even move through like urgency, to the extent that because of the fascist state that we're living in, like, do we have to move quicker? Are we moving in response to things? Or do we just keep operating as we have been doing already? Like not operating out of fear, and how to do that, what that looks like. And answering that question and thinking about that, me going into my second year right now means that if I finish this thing, God willing, in 5 years, then I'll be graduating in 2029. I do want to teach. That's like my main goal. I want to teach students. I want to have students. I want to impart knowledge on them. So I am thinking about how I'm going to be able to get through to them years from now. And the reason I think about that is because I mentioned earlier that I have younger siblings. My oldest younger sister just started her freshman year in high school. So she's going to graduate high school. Right. It's, a whole thing. So she's going to graduate high school when I finish my program, assuming again that I finish this in the time frame that I would like to. So her class of students is going to be my first class of college students if I don't do a postdoc or do like fellowship or something like that, if I go straight into teaching. So I am constantly, in thinking about the future, right, because that's what we do, I am constantly thinking like, how am I going to get through to these kids in the age of misinformation, disinformation that we're in, because you talk to any professor who's seasoned and has been in the game for a while, they'll tell you that they've gone through stages in which things were like really scary when it came to like, I don't know what, college is going to look like, how to get through to students. Like, I know the pandemic was one of those when everything was completely upended. It was like, how do I even successfully teach a class on Zoom and convince students that this kind of stuff matters? But with the whole AI thing that's happening and, the push away from the humanities and social sciences and things like that, I have just been doing a lot of thinking of like, who even is going to be left by the time that you get there, and what kind of information are they going to want to know? What do they want to do? I think because I literally just finished college 2 years ago, I can say that what universities are doing, what family members are doing, what people are just doing generally is telling kids like not to care about learning and to get jobs. And fighting that on a day-to-day basis really drains me. I don't know how to do it. Like, I don't know how to convince people, hey, it's okay to get an English degree. Like, I don't know how to do that. I know it's a fight that they've been fighting for like a really long time, but I don't know how to do that. And we're going to have to do it even more as people, come to and move away from the work. So I really have just been thinking about like, how are we going to get through to them? And what I'll say is I like to come back to my precedents in asking these questions in terms of, again, because I am like a 20th centuryist, if I had to put a time on things, I do a lot of reading on the student movements of the 50s and 60s and just the work that was happening on the ground there. And they didn't want to leave people behind. I think that we've gotten to this place in which people are like, oh, people are so disposable. It's okay to, if they don't get onto the idea, don't waste your time trying to convince them to join you. Yes, that makes sense. And at the same time, the whole point is Black life is not expendable, and we want people to come with us where we're going. So I very literally, as I move into, this is going to be my first year being a TA for a class, I had to make a syllabus for my expressive art and culture class, like a mock syllabus for a class that I would teach. I'm having to ask myself, like, how do we get them? How in 10 years, 20 years are we going to get and sustain the current little kids who aren't even bringing pencils to school because they don't think they have to? Because maybe they don't have to. Everything is on the laptop today anyways, which is so funny for me to say because it's like I was born in 2001, so I'm a part of that group, but at the same time, I'm not. I know the educators have answers to these questions, but that's what I'm thinking about. Like, how do we get them and how do we keep them is, I think, the urgent question.
I'm sorry, and I mean this so seriously. I love the fact that your question is pointing us toward students. We're students ourselves. I believe that something that is beautiful about Black Studies is that we all can consider ourselves forever students,
Yes.
always in that practice. But how do we call students into the class? Like what you're calling like central to our attention right now is like the classroom. The students are like our practices. Like how do we get students, let alone interested, but to sustain them in doing this work? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's something extremely necessary that I hope most people, if not all folks and practitioners within Black Studies are sitting with and considering. And not to sound dramatic, but especially, right? Especially right now.
Yeah. No, it is
we
that
need that
serious.
more
It
than
is that
ever.
dramatic. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is that dramatic.
Yes. Yasmine, I know I've been grateful to sit here and witness your brilliance and talk with you and get to know you. I'm so grateful that you came on the podcast. And I hope you have an amazing day.
Thank you. I'm so happy I got invited.